So, good morning, good afternoon, or good night to everyone. It is a pleasure to be here presenting the development of a national pollinator strategy for Portugal based on the theory of change. I speak on my behalf and on behalf of João Loureiro as country coordinators of the TOC. First, I will take a few seconds to make an international and national context to provide a global scenario where Portugal stands at this moment in regards to pollinators. And as you all know, in the last years, we have had several international initiatives towards pollinator conservation, and most of them are actually triggered by the IPBES assessment report on pollinators, pollination, and food production. In recent times, with the European Commission adopting the first European initiative on wild pollinators that defines strategic objectives and actions to be implemented by the European Union and by its member states to face pollinator decline. At the national level, Portugal is located in a biodiversity hotspot, harboring thus a high diversity of wild pollinators, in particular wild bees, as well as a high diversity of wild plants that are insect dependent for reproduction, and numerous key insect pollinated crops for which pollination is essential for yield quantity and quality. Still, pollinator communities are largely unexplored in our region, and the diversity and its functional role are still largely unknown. At the same time, in the last years, there has been progress in our knowledge for pollinators in our area through numerous actions of very different types, from the development of the first red list to the production of checklists of some groups, collection of data for biodiversity platforms, the research projects, growing investment in dissemination, the creation of Pollinet, a national network for stakeholders linked with pollinators, and actually the first signs of political awareness, both at the central and local administrations. Yet, we still lack a strategic plan specifically focused on pollinators. And with the fact that Portugal joined the coalition in mid-2020 actually triggers the first steps towards the discussion of a pollinator action plan in Portugal. And we then had the excellent opportunity to join the workshops on national pollinator strategies promoted by Promote Pollinators. And here it starts our journey. We first identified stakeholders organizations from very different typologies. And within these organizations, we try to identify persons willing to participate actively in the theory of change. And this culminates with this wonderful team to which we are deeply thankful. And the team is, like, to summarize it, the team is composed by 2 country coordinators and 23 participants from different places of Portugal. And through the process, we had always the assistance of 2 permanent consultants with us. And we already had the opportunity to have 3 workshops with them. In between these workshops, we organized 10 intermediate meetings with an attendance rate of 41%. All these meetings were held online, which was a huge advantage to bring together persons and people from very different places of the country. And this definitely promoted participation. And at the same time, because it enabled to record the sessions, it engaged people with the theory of change process, because they would revise or keep aware of the developments, even if they weren't able to participate in some of the meetings. A huge disadvantage of the online meetings was that the participation is not as personal as we would desire in a process like this, and actually rely a lot on the participants' computer skills, which may hinder some steps. Yet the advantages were huge and more than the disadvantages. And this high engagement of the participants was not only because these tools facilitated their participation, but also because at this moment in Portugal, we are in a moment where there are a lot of things happening related with pollinators, and people really want to get involved and wants to participate. So participants were very eager to participate and meet as we can see by the number of meetings that we held. And the environment was actually very friendly and open, where it looked like everyone felt comfortable in sharing his or her opinions. Um, our very first task was to work on a context statement, and a context statement that aims to capture like the general facts regarding pollinators and pollination in Portugal, but also to ensure that participants departed from a common ground. So we gather some numbers. We gather some numbers about landscape, pollinators, pollination, key pressures, and past and ongoing actions. And immediately we felt that we needed a glossary to uniformize the terminology between the stakeholders with different expertise. And this was actually a key point during the entire process. Then we tried to compile all these facts and numbers and added them to an illustration of our landscape as a summary for a context statement. The second task was to run a preparatory survey, and a preparatory survey to list worries, dreams, factors impacting pollinators and actors linked with pollinators. And the surveys were then transferred to a whiteboard where everyone could work on. And in the first workshop, we worked together to build our impact statement, working from the dreams of all the participants towards a common goal. And the process was actually very dynamic, and it was constructed over several steps where the participants could rephrase their major dreams and vote on the proposals from other participants until we reach a common impact statement, which is in a world in which pollinators and ecosystem services they provide are promoted across all landscapes. Afterwards, we started working on the factors that were positive or negative in green or red, respectively, and that would impact pollinators. And everyone contributed with their expertise, their knowledge, and we then tried to organize all these contributions into topics or themes that were actually very important to structure the theory of change afterwards. And the process started. In this video, you can see the work of three different teams, building it in a way where they try to identify outputs that are linked directly to our impact statement and build it backwards, identifying what would be needed to achieve them. The process was chaotic, as you can see in the video, but it is definitely an intrinsic aspect of the entire process. And the participants were always very excited with it and tried to develop it the best way possible, trying to connect everything and try to find connections between all the boxes that were appearing in the theory of change. So currently we have the version 1.0, we call it 1.0, but it is important to note that to achieve this version, we had many beta versions with different structures. And this version identifies four main themes. So policy and funding, research and knowledge, practices and management, awareness and eco-literacy, all connected with each other and with our input statements. And we also identify over 30 outputs. And just as examples, you can see, for example, things like the development of an action plan, the development of guidelines, as well as farmers and forest managers knowing what to do and wanting to improve productive and non-productive areas to promote pollinator-friendly habitats. So, trying to sum up everything, um, we are aware that there is much space to improve, and at the same time, there is willingness to continue collaborating, which is great. The process was chaotic and difficult in many times, but it's part of the process. We highlight that some misunderstandings were actually caused because we were using different terminologies, and that could be easily solved. And we were also able to identify sensible topics, but we worked together towards a consensus, which was quite nice. Then the need for an action plan was consensual and of pivotal importance, identified as pivotal importance by the participants, and also the need to work in eco-literacy. It's another important issue. So, as summary, we recognize that this stepwise and co-construction process actually enable us to structure the ideas of very different persons and enable us to establish some bases, both personally and professionally, that could help us design a future strategic plan. Finally, as next steps, we would like to finish the process and develop materials for dissemination. We would like then to present the results to our Polynet network, to the general public, and also to central and local administrations, and actually use the process as guideline to start giving the first steps to build the action plan, to raise political awareness, and to raise funds for the development of the action plan for pollinator conservation in Portugal. So thank you very much for your attention. I will be happy to address the questions that you may have.